Hi, I'm Will Thompson of This Weekend. This is a special bonus episode of This Week in Startups with Jason Calacanis being interviewed by Ryan Carson of 100 Things, presented by Think Vitamin online conferences. We'd like to thank our own sponsors, which is Ustream, WebSpy, DNA Mail, and PowerVPS for making this episode possible. Enjoy.
To start Mahalo, which is a human-powered search engine. And Jason is just a real advocate of entrepreneurs. He has just been really supportive of everybody in the community, really waged a war against pay-to-play VCs and angels with Open Angel Forum. And it's a real honor to have you on the show, so thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really great. You put on a great show. You know, any event you do, I will speak at, primarily because you have really great curation skills and you pick really great speakers. I guess that's a little self-serving for me to say that, but
I appreciate that.
All of your events, very good speakers, and I think you do a really good job of providing great speakers at a pretty affordable price for people. So is there a place where I can actually see the chat room?
You can.
Or maybe you could just tell me what they're saying.
I'll just tell you, basically,
yeah.
If anyone shouts out a question, I'll just, otherwise, feel free, let's just rock on and
okay.
Go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to hear how we're doing and all that kind of stuff. So let me introduce two people who I brought into the talk with me. We're here at, actually, thisweekin.com studios. A little plug there. This is the studio in which Kevin Pollak does his show. I do This Week in Startups here. And this is actually going to be part of my talk.
I lost your video.
Oh, did we lose video?
You're back. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. Great. And this is where we do a lot of video for Mahalo, and I do video for different events. And videos are going to be a big part of my talk today because I think that is one of the best ways to get traffic and capture attention today. With me is Enrique, who works at Mahalo and does traffic, SEO, content, massaging. What do you want to? What is your revenue generation?
Yeah, it's basically just paying attention to traffic resources and curating the content, making it more readable for the users and engaging.
Great. And also with me is Tyler Crowley. Tyler works with me on strategy and corporate development, and that's everything from public relations to interesting ideas to that will capture people's attention. We call them memes sometimes. I guess Seth Godin would call them a purple cow, but Tyler Crowley is with me as well. And so 10 ways to deliver traffic. I'm going to try to talk about things that maybe aren't so obvious. I mean, there are essentially three buckets for traffic getting on the internet, and you see them when you go into Google Analytics. One of them is direct traffic. That is people typing in your domain name. Or most people would put searching for your domain name on Google into there as well, since people are using just Google to get to Mahalo or, you know, TechCrunch. That's direct traffic. That's one bucket. Then there's referral traffic is another bucket. That's when somebody links to your site and sends you traffic. So you got picked up on TechMeme, you got a front page of Dig, Reddit, whatever, Twitter. That's referral. And then there's a third bucket, which is SEO search. And that is traffic coming from a search engine. But these lines are blurring, and you have things like SEM, search engine marketing, which is when people buy keywords on a service to send traffic. And then you have things like social media, which is a whole new ball of wax. People tweeting, retweeting, Facebooking, sharing socially a link. Well, where does that fall? Does it fall under referral? Probably. It's coming from a link, but it's a different type of link than just a link thrown on a blog, which has a little bit of socialization to it, but it's a socialization of one, not necessarily of you know, a group of people. So using the old metrics is kind of hard. What I want to talk to you is a little bit about the art of traffic. No one thing is going to be the success or failure of your site. Getting traffic to a site is a long-term process. It is a long-term process that is built off of quality, I believe primarily. The short-term tricks are just that, and they will only take you so far. You have to have a long-term value proposition for users in order for this to take off.
Hey, Jason, just to interrupt you, some of the folks are just wondering, if you have this as a presentation, is there anywhere that they can see it later, or?
We didn't make it a presentation, but I will have Tyler put it up for people. And we're recording this video too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. And hey guys, on my side, are we recording too? Yeah. Okay, great. So we'll have dual copies of it. So one of the secrets that we've had as a company is something that we call PR for PR. This is my first sort of rule. And this is something Tyler and I came up with when we would travel basically around the world for Mahalo and speaking gigs. We're lucky enough to get invited to speak at a lot of conferences, say at a FOA in London. What Tyler would do is Tyler would work to figure out who are the important people, the press, the bloggers, etc. And we'd make sort of an Excel spreadsheet, actually in this case a Google spreadsheet, and we would talk to the 10 people who we knew in London about who are the top 2 or 3 bloggers you know, who are the top 2 or 3 press people, who are the top 2 or 3 CEOs, who are the top 2 or 3 VCs. Right. Correct? Yeah. And so then Tyler would then have a sort of a starting point. Maybe that list would have how many people on it, Tyler?
15, 20, yeah.
20
there would be quite a bit of overlap because the people who are of note are usually, there's a high degree of...
Right. So people might say, oh, you're coming to London, you need to meet Richard Titus,
right.
You need to meet this person from The Guardian, etc.
Jemima.
Jemima from Jemima McKiss from The Guardian, etc. Then we would look at that list, start calling those people, letting them know we're coming to London, what dates, maybe we should get together. And maybe for breakfast, maybe for lunch. And, oh, do they know anybody else you think that we should meet with who's interesting? And we would be doing this in the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to visiting a city. And then Tyler would set up a breakfast, a lunch, maybe a dinner, etc. This is what I would call like sort of hyper networking or networking with a little more discipline.
Yeah, disciplined networking.
A disciplined networking process.
I love it. That's an absolutely brilliant idea.
And what we would basically, we would anchor these with, we're going to have breakfast this day at this hotel. We've got a reservation for lunch for 8 people at this nice place. And these would just be places we would want to go, Tyler and I, typically because we're foodies. And then we're going to have cocktails at this time, and then we have a dinner this time. And sometimes those would be speaking gigs or associated with it. We're going to have coffee at this time. Then we'd say to people, oh, are you around for breakfast? Say, oh, no, I can't make breakfast. Oh, because we're also having drinks later that night over here with these 2 people. Do you know them? They say, oh, yeah, of course I know them, but I don't know that guy. Maybe I'd like to meet them. So now we're introducing people to other people in their own city. What this would do is create a massive amount of buzz that we're coming to town, and what are we talking about? Why are we there? And we would only go places when we had something to promote and sell. And so we're there with a new feature for Mahalo. We're there with a new conference, TechCrunch 50 or whatever. We have something to talk about. We have bullet points about it. And this is when we would start the PR for PR. And what this is public relations for PageRank. People talk about getting inbound links is a very important part of SEO. Of course it is. No inbound link is more valuable than a traditional mainstream media outlet or a very large blog. These are 2 of the most important things. Well, if you're having cocktails with a group of bloggers and they start taking pictures and they start doing videos and you're talking about your company, their company, whatever, you don't even have to sell them on what you're doing. They're going to say, oh, Tyler and Jason from Mahalo.com. They're going to link it. So just by being socially active in the real world, you can create SEO. You don't have to go begging for links. Just being present and doing things is very important. And actually, a company called Grasshopper did something very interesting one day. They sent me chocolate-covered grasshoppers. And the first thing I did was take a picture of it and say, who are these idiots sending me chocolate-covered grasshoppers? Of course, I'm the idiot because I just sent PageRank to them. And so that's a sort of purple cow. You can look that up online, but this sort of little interesting thing that you can do. Now, that's our first thing, PR for PR. The second thing...
Jason, one second. Your video froze. Let's just let it catch up. Not sure why it froze. There you go. We're back.
OK. I think maybe are you closing your camera maybe sometimes in between when I'm talking?
I did, but that may have caused it, so I'll just leave it alone now.
Yeah. Stop playing with your laptop. OK. The second thing, so Tyler, anything to add to that sort of PR for PR strategy that we employed?
When that really kicked into high gear is when the blogger breakfast concept came into play. And it's
Blogger breakfast.
Yeah, and instead of the one-on-one breakfast, the open, let's get the bloggers of the city. And it's so strange that a lot of this, we're talking Tokyo, London, Sydney, yeah. And they don't do this themselves.
Right.
But they love the idea of doing this.
Right.
And they come there and it's a photo fest and a tweet fest and everything else. And
right.
I think it spurs on the idea, like, they all look at each other like, we should do this weekly or whatever. So
yeah. And so we just came up with this idea, Blogger Breakfast, as part of this PR for PR. And, actually, we didn't do this exactly strategically. We did this because we like meeting people, right? And we like sharing ideas. And I'm a blogger, and we just like to meet people. But then what we realized was every time we come back from a city, I'd ask Tyler to sort of debrief me on what we accomplished. And it would be, wow, we were in these 20 different publications. And I'd say, wow, 16 of those had links. That's got to be valuable, right, for the mahalo.com domain or for this domain or that domain. And he said it is. And then, of course, a bunch of SEOs would criticize me like, oh, my God, Jason is using his popularity to get SEO.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question that I think the audience wants to know is,
yeah.
Okay, yes, you're well connected. These meetings are easy for you to get.
Yeah.
How do you, when nobody knows you, get those meetings?
That's a great question. 10 years ago, nobody did know me. When I was started weblogging, nobody knew me. And so I had a strategy when I was at an event. I would find the one or two people I knew. And I'd say, what are you doing for dinner tonight? And they would say, I got plans. I'm going to this guy's dinner. I'd say, great, take me. But more often than not, they didn't have dinner plans. And I'd say, I have a reservation at this place. We should grab dinner and talk, and whatever. And they'd say, yeah, sure, let's go to dinner. So now, very early on in a conference or an event, I'd have a dinner reservation. I'd actually have a dinner reservation for 6 or 8. But I just tell them I got a dinner reservation. I wouldn't tell them how many people it's for. I'd say, yeah, the 2 of us, 3 of us can get dinner. It'll be nice. And then we'll go to the cocktail party. Then go to the next person. Hey, Tyler and I are having dinner, and maybe you should join us. Okay, now Tyler and Enrique are having dinner. And you can sort of build off of that. And I basically built a career off of that, which was just hyper networking like that. And it's a game of small numbers. So you start with just 3 or 4 people. But if 3 or 4 people are going to dinner, it can very quickly turn into 12. Because you have a reservation and you're already set up. And you know what? You can cancel a reservation. So sometimes I tell my assistant, get me 3 reservations at 3 different places, and I just cancel the other 2. Or I do it myself. And so it can work with a small number of people as well. And it's incredibly valuable. Networking in the real world leads to ramifications online is the main point here. Anytime you can meet people in the real world, it's a great thing to do. Anytime you can have the people who work at your company get out in the real world and do things, that's a great thing. And so you have to allow a little bit of time for that, for your people to go out and network and to sort of meet people and be active and represent your brand. And it's always good to explain to people what it means to represent the brand inside your company. That means to introduce yourself to people. Read Dale Carnegie's book on how to influence people. And I mean, he basically just says, like, ask people what they do. I mean, that's essentially the entire book. I could save you a lot of time. If you show interest in other people and ask them, hey, what do you do? And how's it going? Which is always my follow-up question. Hey, what do you do? And how's that going? People just feel like, wow, that's very gracious. The person asked me what I'm doing, and the reciprocation effect makes them want to just ask you the same question, and all of a sudden you've developed a relationship. So it may seem a little odd to describe it in that way and describe the psychology behind it, but we all do it naturally anyway, just to different extents. People in the technology business typically don't do it as well as others. That's why when somebody comes into the technology business with a bit of personality, like a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Kevin Rose, they can tear the place apart. Gary Vaynerchuk's like, what? There's a bunch of quiet people in a room? Hey, that guy's the loudest person on the planet. Yeah. He's speaking, right? Did he speak yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah, he probably broke a couple microphones.
Yep.
You had to get an extra bandwidth for all of his loud things. You have to crush it. You guys, are you ready to crush it?
Well, the thing that I love about Gary, though, is he genuinely cares, though. Somehow he makes the time to care about the little people that it's just easy to gloss over him because you get busy.
Yeah, I mean, he's authentic, and he's a good guy. Anyway, that's the first sort of part of it. Even if you're a nobody, trust me, anybody who's a somebody was a nobody at some point. I met Mark Cuban when he had like 9 people at his company. Nobody knew who he was. And frankly, when he started his company, people were like, oh, my God, that's the stupidest idea ever. radio over the internet, like you listen to local sports over the internet. I mean, people sort of dismissed it. And so I think you have to be patient and, slowly you sort of start moving up the food chain. And when I started, when I was doing Silicon Valley Reporter, I mean, forget it. I was networking constantly. That's all I did. And Tyler can tell you, I mean, on our trips, and I took this year off from speaking gigs in terms of travel, but on the speaking gigs that we were doing last year, how many press interviews / meetings / breakfasts, how many of those would we have in a single day on the busy days, let's say?
Typically, if it all hinges around flying in for a talk, right? Like a keynote of sorts. And the idea is only agreeing to do keynotes when there's something else that coordinates with it, like a feature launch.
Right.
And meeting with all of the press in advance to give them the scoop on what it's going to be.
Right.
So that they have time to write it up.
Right.
But that whole process, like you said, starts 2 weeks in advance. And then once arriving, you arrive maybe the day before.
Right.
That entire day before is booked from morning to night. I mean, you don't have time to check email for the most part.
Right. Basically not checking. The meetings are so back to back, half an hour, 45 minutes each. We basically do 10 meetings in a day, 15 meetings in a day.
It turns into like that game show, the Great Race, where they're running all over town to...
Yeah, and that's the kind of hustle you have to show if you're going to want to get your brand ahead. Because guess what? If you don't have that kind of hustle, I do, and other people do. And if you're not out there meeting all those people and discussing your product and hearing about their product, you're stagnant and you're not going to win. People are always like, oh my God, you're so, and you gave me a little kudos. Oh my God, Open Angel Forum, that's so great. You're doing something so great for the community. You're helping angel investors meet with startup companies, TechCrunch 50. People, oh my God, that's an incredible conference. You guys do so much good for the community. Truth be told, I get much more out of those events, and my team gets much more out of those events than those people actually get out of the event, or equal. I get to hear from intelligent people where they think the future is going on a regular basis. I get to hear people pitch me. We're doing 8 cities now for Open Angel Forum. We'll hit 10 this year, 3 times a year each. 100 people apply each time. We look through those. I personally meet with the top 15 each time. That's hundreds of companies a year, and I meet with the top 200 or 300 from TechCrunch 50. Those people are pitching me over and over again on their business, why it's going to work, and asking me for my feedback. You get really smart if you hang out with smart people. So if you're running a company and you're hanging out in your office trying to make things happen, you're probably not going to actually make things happen. You have to get out of the office and go meet people and say, I want to hear what you're doing. Now, you may not have an efficient model as I do because of running other events, but you can very easily look at who's coming to an event and say, I would love to hear more about your company. And you can start a blog where you write about other companies that you're hearing about and all the interesting stuff they're doing and work your way into an industry. So whenever anybody tells me, how do I break into this? I say, start a blog and start writing about that topic and ask the people who you're meeting with, hey, can I meet you and I just want to maybe visit your company or get a cup of coffee with you, hear about what you guys are doing. I love your company. You know, if somebody asks me that, I'm instantly like, yeah, come over for coffee.
So now, regarding this kind of stuff, so, trying to generate PR, connecting with people, getting out there and chatting to people, how much of your time percentage-wise do you spend doing that versus traditional CEO duties, like looking at cash flows and budgets and managing your team?
So the great secret of being a CEO is actually there's not that much to do. Now, CEOs are going to disagree with me about this, different ones at different age groups, different levels of experience. But the truth is, if you hire the right people, your job is largely setting priorities, making sure you're hitting targets, getting in new talent, recruiting constantly, maybe raising money. But these things don't happen all that often, so you do wind up actually having a decent amount of time to go out there and bang the drum, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. What happens is a lot of people who are CEOs in the technology space, they're the CTO and CEO. So there's Zuckerberg, who wants to write code and be the CEO at the same time. Or they're me when I was doing Weblogs Inc., where I wanted to be writing and setting the editorial direction and naming the naming the sites, buying the domain names, picking the writers, and being CEO. And in that model, if you're doing the sort of creative process or the product process or the development process and CEO, you could be pretty strained for time. What I like to do now is hire great people for each of those roles, and then I can spend my time on the bigger picture. I would say a CEO should spend at least 20% of their time out there meeting people and banging the drum. In the early days of a startup, they might want to spend half their time out of the office doing that. That's provided they have somebody else actually building the business and managing it. That's why having a co-founder is very important for a young entrepreneur. That's why having capital is better for an older entrepreneur who maybe doesn't want to have a co-founder but needs to have resources. And there's different points in time. You know, there might be times when I'm spending 80% of my time out of the office, banging the drum and trying to get interest. But there's other times when you're focusing just on the project. I find earlier in a project, and it sort of ebbs and flows. When I started Mahalo, I was head down doing just two things: raising money, building the product, raising money, building the product. Then as we launched, I was spending all my time promoting. Then we got some traction, and I said, you know, I got to focus on the business and refine the product. So then I'm refining the product for a period of time. Then I'm out pitching that refinement. Right now, you probably haven't heard me out there banging the drum about Mahalo, but it's going really well. Traffic is up, and we're making a lot of money. So, because right now I'm focused on getting to profitability. We don't need to raise money. We're lucky we raised a bunch in the beginning. So I've been very focused on recruiting talent and getting revenue in, and actually took this year off from promoting and just focusing on the business. So you do have to. It's not one number. It's you have to tweak it as you go, and that's where the art of being a CEO and running a startup comes in. Sometimes you got to double down on product. Other times you got to double down on promotion, raise a bunch of money, be out there closing deals, and then shutting that process down. So like people email me now and they're like, "Hey, we want to invest in your company." I say, "We're not raising money. That's it. Right. We're funded." And I shut them up. "Oh, can we do a phone call?" I say, "We don't do phone calls. If you would like to come and see our business, please set up a meeting with Tyler. We're in Santa Monica." And that's basically what I tell venture capitalists. We're not raising money. We're not visiting your office. We're not doing phone calls. We don't talk about our business on the phone. If you happen to be in Santa Monica, come by for a meeting. And I would say 3 out of 4 don't come, and then 1 out of 4 does. Is my basic experience.
Brilliant. All right.
All right. So that's been 30 minutes. Let's get to number 2.
Go.
I'm gonna jump around a lot. Let me show you something online here. Buying traffic. I'm not a huge fan, I'll be honest. There are some people who are very much into buying traffic. Their businesses are based on something called arbitrage. What that means is buying traffic for X amount and monetizing it for X plus 1. And so I'm on the board of a company called Savings.com. They buy click traffic, SEM, and they point it towards Savings.com pages where they have a bunch of offers for 20% off, 30% off, and they can do the arbitrage there and actually make money. Groupon, you've heard about. Groupon is trying to move 1,000 $100 gift certificates for $50. That's $50,000. So they'll buy $10,000 worth of click ads at 50 cents a piece to anybody who's based in Los Angeles. And that's why you see Groupon everywhere, at least in the United States. So that is a legitimate business if you can monetize your pages. Most people in the content business cannot. Certainly in a social network, you cannot, right? They don't monetize well enough. However, there are some loopholes. And so I'll show you here on my Facebook page. Here, we launched a site called iPad-answers.com. I said I would never launch a site with a dash in it, but I did. And so the interesting thing to note here, this is Facebook's ad network. And you can get to Facebook's ad network just by going to advertising at the bottom and the footer on any page. And here you see this ad that I did, which says iPad-answers.com live. The first questions and answers community around the iPad has launched. Get free support from experts on your iPad. And it had 4.3 million impressions. Miserable click-through rate of 0.02%. Ads on Facebook do not get a lot of click-through rate because they're so tiny and they're out of the way. Average cost per click, 47 cents, and $326 spent. So that's a pretty high cost per click. But the interesting thing is if you build ads that don't necessarily get clicked on, you can get your domain name, and here's how it looks on my profile. And if you look here, you can see on my profile, you actually see the domain name. So this is a great way to build branding if you have an ad that people are not generally going to click on. You can actually brand your domain name and put it out there a lot. That could have been my logo instead of the picture of Steve Jobs with the iPad. This is something that an SEM person showed me and said, by the way, make an ad that nobody clicks on, and you get free impressions from Facebook, or very low. Video, I think, and so that's just buying things. You can buy also from StumbleUpon. And the interesting thing about StumbleUpon and buying traffic like this is it can also be a driver of SEO. And this is why a lot of SEOs promote a little bit of SEM. Because maybe somebody will blog, they saw that ad and put a link to it. Sounds stupid, but it does happen. Or maybe somebody will find something on the iPad Answers site that they find interesting and blog about it. StumbleUpon has actually sort of a backdoor to this. You pay a nickel per person on StumbleUpon, and when they're clicking that StumbleUpon button and whipping past pages, they may land on your page, and if they thumb it up, it may go on their page, and then they may syndicate their StumbleUpons to their blog, and now all of a sudden you got a link going, and you may get caught up in the sort of voting things up page. And one Black Hat SEO was telling me the way they did this was they would make one page that was really something that people would want to vote up, like a bunch of thumbs up for mortgages, like 10 tips on how to, get this mortgage. Then, after they had hit critical mass on StumbleUpon, were actually legitimately getting stumbled, they would redesign the page and change it and put an ad up there, in a form to like sign up. So people do sort of wacky things like that. But that's in the sort of buying side. Any questions on that, on buying modest amounts of traffic?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you determine your budget for buying those ads?
If you have the arbitrage opportunity, obviously you just keep buying ads until the cows come home, right? If you can say, I can buy traffic at a nickel and monetize it for 6 cents, that's a 20% margin. You can keep going, right? And most people will. The problem is those kind of keywords, there's massive competition for. But there's actually a cool service out of Boulder called Trada, which I had the CEO of on This Week in Startups. You guys can look it up at thisweekin.com. And they hire SEMs, and you tell them, this is what I'm willing to pay for the traffic, and they do all that work for you. So it's sort of like a virtual community of SEM buyers. So you don't have to hire an SEM consultant. You just say, I know if I get a qualified lead for 25 cents, I make $1 when they buy this T-shirt. Get me anybody for up to 99 cents, and I'm in the black. And people will be like, oh, OK, I'll go for it.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Trada is an interesting company. And it's all virtual. So basically, you hire an SEM through their site, and actually, they'll give your SEM project. You say, I'm a T-shirt company. I produce custom shirts. And they cost $60. And our margin is 50%. If you can get us people, we make $30 for every conversion. And then they say, OK, great, we're going to go to work because we know we can get custom shirt people at 30 cents a click or whatever. And they might give it to 3 or 4 SEMs on their side and let them just go to town on it. And the SEMs make the spread. So it's kind of an interesting model where you sort of takes the risk out of it for you as an individual and lets them go figure out, oh, my God, there's a French word for this type of shirt, and you would have never guessed that there is a French word for that shirt, or, this one demographic is referring to that shirt as this type of shirt, or whatever. Any thoughts on that, guys, though?
That was episode 47.
Episode 47 of This Week in Startups. What was the CEO's name again?
Neil Robertson.
Neil Robertson from Trada, Trada.
Right.
Enrique, any thoughts on SEM and buying traffic in order to do SEO or anything? I know that you do some of this and have done some of it.
Yeah, well, just to repeat basically what you said, make sure if you're going to buy traffic that you don't overspend and get ahead of yourself, because once you start doing that, you have a lot of catch up to do. So once you're in the red with buying traffic, and you could just fall behind, and then you're just playing catch up.
That's the scary part.
Yes.
Is that it's sort of like playing poker, like if you play too loose for those poker players out there and you're getting into too many hands and you're losing too many blinds, you can fall behind and never catch up. To say that in English, if you're buying traffic at $1 and only making 50 cents off of it, it doesn't take a genius to figure out you got a pretty big hole you got to dig yourself out of. So most people like to buy it in small chunks and set limits. And that's what actually a lot of the tools like Google AdSense, you can limit it by the amount per day. So making 10 campaigns and saying, I don't want to spend more than $50 on each one until I see what the results are, it's pretty smart.
Yes.
And then once you start to see results, maybe upping it a little bit, $75, $100 a day, whatever. But you have to monitor those things and set some limits. But I'm actually, in all honesty, not the biggest expert on this kind of stuff. The way I've gotten all the traffic I've gotten in my career is by doing content that I feel is fascinating and that you would want to repeat to people. So in the Engadget days, in the Autoblog days, and in the Mahalo days, I've always said to people, is that content fascinating? And they say, yeah, sure, it's fascinating. And I say, really? Pull it up. Would you take this content, if it is indeed, in fact, fascinating, will you bring it up at dinner tonight? Is it that fascinating that you'll make it dinner conversation or at a cocktail party? And I have that test. Is it Apple F-able or Control F-able for you Windows people? And that means, will people forward it? And to me, that's the big test. And so one of the things that made Engadget the juggernaut it is today is this story you see right here. And this happened back in 2004. I got a phone call from a guy named Philip Tyrone, and he said to me, Jason, look at this video. And it was a video of him opening a kryptonite lock with a Bic pen. And he said, you can open a kryptonite lock on a Bic pen. And I said, really? He said, yeah, watch this video. And this is the video. It's a famous video. This is a backup of it, but it had the Engadget at the beginning. And he just basically
Evolution 2000 lock.
took this lock and opens it with a Bic pen.
To lock up my bike around here in Seattle until I found out that we could take a Bic pen and just remove the top and just pop it into the lock and just do a couple of little quick twists and turns and voila, your lock and your bike is completely.
So anyway, I don't know if that came through across. So did it came across okay? So when I saw this video, I said, put it up on the site immediately. I said, oh, you know, well, legal or this. I said, well, I don't care. Put it on the site. That's fascinating. I want to tell everybody I know that you can open this lock with a Bic pen. And if we don't tell them, somebody's going to tell them. This will become common knowledge that you can do this within a week of this video coming out. And sure enough, it did. And this created a massive amount of inbound links. And this was created through hustle and finding stuff. This was found on a bike messenger board. Somebody had mentioned it, and somebody had the chutzpah and the wherewithal and the hustle to go actually try it on my team, Phil Tyrone. This was one of the seminal moments in the history of not only Engadget, but Weblogs Inc., because we realized, gosh, these viral things are extremely powerful, and we spent a lot of time trying to find them. And you may have seen me do my email newsletter. I think email is one of the most powerful ways to drive traffic and one of the easiest ways. Provide some tremendous amount of value to your audience, and they will give you their email address. The problem with email is typically people say, give me your email address. And you say, well, why am I giving it to you? And they say, so I can keep you up to date on what I'm doing. And you say, well, why do I care? Why should I give you my email? If you are going to get somebody's email, you have a responsibility to make it fascinating. And I'm amazed by how many emails I get from companies that I've given my email to that are not fascinating, that are not absolutely awesome. Well, why not? If you're going to take the time to flood my email box, it has to be something really good. That's my feeling. So on my blog, I announced last summer, or 2 summers ago, about a year and a half ago, I announced that I was retiring from blogging because I found it too vapid and stupid and whatever. It was a joke, but I knew that some people would take it seriously, so I made it purposefully ambiguous. And a tolerance for ambiguity is something that most people do not have. And so when you do something that is confusing, it leads to attention. You see this when some maniac comes into McDonald's and does something insane, like starts singing. You're like, oh my God, this person should not be singing in the middle of McDonald's. I'm going to pay attention to them. Now, that doesn't mean I'm advocating you act like an idiot and sing in McDonald's. But if you do have a situation where something is confusing, you don't necessarily have to solve that problem for people. That could be an opportunity for people to give their attention to that problem. And so I said, I think blogging's not so interesting to me anymore. I'm going to go to my email newsletter. And I just emailed 100 people my thoughts on something. And more than half of them got back to me. This is when I sent my first email. And that email list now, 18 months later, has 23,000 people on it. And I take 3 months off from it, and then I might do 3 in a week. But I always have a benchmark of, is this absolutely fascinating and something passionate that is very helpful to somebody? And if you can entertain people, save them money, save them time, or educate them, you got something winning on your hands. And if you look at the winning emails that get out to people, they tend to be things that resolve a problem for people, save them time, or save them money. And so here is an example of on TechCrunch. I actually did post it to my blog. That's one of the great ironies, is that now that I have this email newsletter, every time I publish it, so many people miss it that they come back and say, oh my God, can I get a copy of it? And then eventually, like a day or two later, I might post it to my blog. But I wrote the official verdict in the stolen iPhone case. Now, the words here were crafted very carefully. And the first thing you would ask is what, Carson?
I don't know.
Well, when you read that title, the official verdict in the stolen iPhone case,
Right.
what is unique about that headline?
It's the official.
Right. Official according to who? How is it official?
Exactly.
And I never explain at any point why this is the official one, other than the fact that I'm giving it.
Right.
But that one little thing operates on a very deft level for people, that they go, oh my God, well, this is the official one, that I need to be involved in it. And then here's another one. Again, about an Apple product. They said, this is the case against Apple in 5 parts. What is the thing, Carson, that stands out here? What do you want to know next?
Well, what are the 5 parts?
Exactly. And so every time I craft a headline, I say to myself, what is going to confuse Carson about this? But I think about my readers and say, what is going to grab their attention in this headline that makes them want to read it? And I also make sure that, you can put the camera back on me, guys, that I'm trying to write something that is important, that has value. And too many people use the email the wrong way, which is to send things that are not important. Email is still the most important communication medium of all time ever created, in my belief. As such, use it with great care and for great substance. Even if it's a small number of people, if you use it properly, a large percentage of people will respond. The reason why email open rates and clicks are so low and disastrous is because people suck at writing good, entertaining, interesting, fascinating emails. Write something fascinating that provides great value, and throw away 2/3 of what you write, which is what I do. For every email newsletter that comes out, there's at least 2 that don't. And it's because I get halfway through them and say, you know what, this is not good enough. I would rather not send something than lose a couple hundred subscribers, or have anybody say, I'm disappointed in this email, I'm not going to open the next one. So I think email is very important. And the way you phrase things is very important. A little ambiguity, a little bit of something incongruous, something wrong. The mind goes to things that are broken. If I were to show you a beautiful Mercedes-Benz car, this is a famous anecdote from a guy named Yossi Vardi, you can look it up. He's a famous venture capitalist. He did ICQ and sold it for $400 million. And I asked him, hey, what is product design about? At a conference in front of 500 people. I was the moderator. And he said, Jason, good product design is like beautiful 500 Mercedes, brand new leather, beautiful black. You open door, you smell, beautiful car smell, leather steering, 500 SL, beautiful dashboard wood. And then a dog, the big dog, comes running, gallops up, stops at the car, and he looks at you. And then he jumps into the driver's side seat. Big, like German Shepherd type dog. And then he squats. And he takes huge shit on seat. Wet, chunky, juicy, smelly, huge shit all over front seat. It is dripping on the side, shit everywhere. And he steps all over shit on dashboard, everywhere, dog shit. And he runs away. And you look at car, not so good anymore. That's the truth. One little tiny thing can ruin an experience in a product, anywhere, a fly in the soup. And people will become very focused on it. And so you have to use this. This is like Kung Fu ninja skills. You don't want dog shit all over this car. I mean, certainly people are going to look at it, but they're not going to want to get in it. So you have to know exactly when you're building marketing what's repulsive and what is fascinating. Fascinating is the kryptonite lock. Yeah, the dog shitting all over the car is fascinating as well, but maybe people are not going to want to get in it. And if you look at some of the great publications out there that have captured people's imagination, or even movies or other things, right? I mean, you all remember Memento or The Usual Suspects because there is a twist. There is something that you say, this is incongruous, but Kaiser Soze and the cup and this, and wow. And it's fascinating. I'm going to have to tell somebody about it. And that's the art of marketing. That's what gets people. That's what makes people remember things. And I try to include that when we're marketing any product we have.
I love it. I appreciate you sharing that.
OK.
A point to the way that you execute on that I think is awesome, that I really don't see in many other places, is your willingness to make a statement that may be wrong, and people will call you out on it.
Yeah.
And that gets taken all over the place.
Yeah.
And you're fine with it. You know, and matter of fact, it was kind of baked into the process. I think so many people get so concerned with building something that can't be argued with,
right?
That it's like, yep, here's a good point, and then all the comments are good point, good point, good point, good point, good point.
There's nothing to comment on.
There's nothing to like debate the guy about because he didn't stick his neck out and say something potentially foolish.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically you're saying I'm stupid. In some ways, I'm willing to be an idiot.
No, see, I'm doing exactly what I'm
right.
talking about. It's kind of meta here. So.
Well, I mean, taking a position one way or the other is an important thing, I think. And people, you generally, if somebody says like, okay, Facebook, you know, if somebody constructs their headline, Facebook on the borderline of privacy concerns responds quickly to privacy concerns. It's like, well, what exactly happened? You know, it's like Facebook violates user privacy again. Like, I'm clicking on that headline. And this is what newspaper headlines and journalists have known for a long time.
I think yours would say Zuckerberg's a thief.
Well, that's my and I don't think everybody has to have the same personal style. Right. But there is a way to form things. Another thing is maybe go out on a limb. Here I said, oh, I think the suggested user list on Twitter is worth $250,000. I'll pay Evan Williams and Twitter this. This is from 2009 in March. A year ago, and this got a ton of press. Well, basically, people all said Twitter's valuable. I just put a price on it, on what that list was worth, and it got huge pickup. And to this day, people reference that number like that's what it's worth. And so there is a sort of trying to take a position is important in marketing, and you do see people take a position in marketing. If you try to have an airline that appeals to everybody, it appeals consequently to nobody. There's a bargain airline, Ryanair. You know what you're getting. It's like, what is it, Carson? $19 or something?
Like $1 or something.
Right. It's like 50 cents. Like basically, whatever. Like if you help them load the plane, you get on for free. And so it's like nobody feels bad getting on that airplane and not getting a blanket or a pillow because they know what they're buying into. And I think if you pick definitively what you're going for, it's like this is a private jet and it costs this amount. And you're not going to argue with the fee, and then this is the cheapest possible airfare, or this is a, Virgin brand, and it symbolizes something. You have to pick, what you're going to do, and that's everything in marketing, I think.
can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So you got some great advice about writing headlines for articles, which I think is really, really important. But have you put those online somewhere so people can read through your, probably called the top 10, tricks for writing amazing headlines?
I generally save these things for when I'm doing one of your conferences. So no,
I appreciate that.
I do not share them anywhere. I don't. But I think you can watch what I do and look through the archive at calacanis.com or join my mailing list, jasonnation.com. Again, even the naming of that, Jason Nation, is like, who is this guy to say he's got a nation behind him? That's obnoxious. But you now know the domain, Jason Nation, and you will always know it for all time. You'll never forget it. And it also rhymes, so that's pretty good, too. Also on this list, we're flying all over the place, creating content efficiently is critical. This is a blocking and tackling type thing. Q&A services, which I'm involved in, Mahalo Answers, is an incredible way to create a large number of pages very cheaply. Blogging was a way to create a large number of pages cheaply. Wikipedia, large number of pages created extremely cheaply, free. Dig, an extremely large number of pages that they built for free. The entire business of Dig is people summarizing other people's work and then a bunch of people commenting on it. I call this Tom Sawyer, media creation. Everybody knows the story of Tom Sawyer whitewashing the fence. He was punished. He whitewashes the fence. Everybody else pays him to whitewash the fence. He says, hey, this is fun. This is the brilliance of Kevin Rose. Hey, you guys come, wash the fence, and I'm going to go fishing. But you can give me an apple and wash my fence, and I'll eat your apple. And sure enough, people came in there and said, I want to be on the front page of Dig. It matters. And he made very short content pages, but a lot of them. All of the sites that have done well have that in common. A lot of pages with a lot of user activity on them, whether it's YouTube or blogs or Dig or Wikipedia or even StumbleUpon. Any of these sites, that's one thing they have in common. Large amount of content with a large amount of user contribution equals a large amount of traffic. There's no two ways about it. That's how you get traffic in the internet space. Any questions on that, Carson?
No, I mean, I think this is all gold, but I sort of want to pick a bone with you, and,
yes.
and I'd be curious to see what the audience thinks about this. I know that you sort of push the boundaries on these kind of things, but I generally felt betrayed when you were tweeting about the iPad, because it's strange. Like, I believed you, and normally, I take it with a grain of salt. But it was like the line that I couldn't believe you crossed. I was just like,
sure.
Hey, and I guess my question is, where do you draw the line? Do you think it's important to piss people off every once in a while in order to do that, or did you go too far?
Well, actually, I feel really bad about my iPad prank. I hope you'll forgive me, everybody, because trust is very important to me. No, of course, stop it. It's ridiculous. I don't mean to get a little sentimental here. Listen, Carson, you're a smart guy. Do you really think the iPad has 2 cameras and a solar power rig on the back of it?
Well, no, but there's something about I believed you. It was weird.
It had nothing to do with me. What it had to do with was that you wanted Steve Jobs to be able to break the reality of physics and build for you a device that was so extraordinary that Steve Jobs could just bend the laws of physics and cost and supply and technology. That was obviously to fill people in on what it was. I was with my wife. I'm in bed. It's the night before the iPad launch, and I'm like, I'm really sick of hearing about this. And I start tweeting. I said, this is going to be funny. I'm going to tweet that I have one. And that I've had it for 2 weeks, and that Steve Jobs gave it to me, which anybody who knows me knows is impossible, and anybody who knows Apple knows that's impossible. You know that's not possible.
Well, of course, but there was I'm a smart guy, but I took the bait. I was surprised.
So you're upset that you were so gullible.
Well, I have to say it did definitely make me wonder now if I should believe you first,
Right.
or not. I don't know if that's worth anything or not, but.
Well, I'll tell you what my intent was, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at when I do things. My intent was to be playful and joke about how many features it had to the point of absurdity, which is why I described that it had a solar pad and 2 cameras and augmented reality Skype conferencing, which doesn't exist and could never exist. I mean, what does that mean? What does even augmented reality Skype mean?
True. And I felt kind of foolish afterwards, but
right. And so I think what happened was it was a joke that went haywire because I didn't anticipate that people had so much desire for a breakthrough device and so much was loaded into Steve Jobs' ability to deliver one, and in some ways so little was delivered that it left a bad taste in people's mouth. I never thought any journalist would run that the iPad had solar power, 2 cameras, I don't know why I put ridiculous things in there.
DVR.
A DVR. A DVR and an HD tuner? Really? Isn't that like $400 in and of itself? And that it was $500? I mean, I described a device that would cost $3,500 and like 8 pounds, according to somebody. So the Wall Street Journal decides to run this. And I don't know what technology reporter that was or where he's working now. But, I mean, you have to be an absolute idiot to think that that's even possible. And, of course, Josh from Engadget emailed me and said, that's the funniest joke ever. But what I did learn out of this was people do not listen to every tweet that you do in a row. So some people got like 2 or 3 of the tweets and said, oh, Jason has one. It has solar power, and it has a video camera on the front. Now, that in and of itself maybe seems plausible. I don't know. It's not plausible that Steve Jobs would ever give me a device because he wouldn't even give his mom or his own employees the device ahead of time. So he's not giving it to me, certainly. So I think also are you an Apple fanboy? Is that part of the problem?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I like to think I'm objective. But I guess my point in the question is I don't want to go too much down this route for the attendees. But it's interesting to see where you drew the line. It generated a lot of, press or chatter about you and Mahalo. And in the end, is that good or bad? Don't know. But I appreciate the fact you're willing to put yourself out there, and I think that's a lesson.
It was never designed, to be totally honest, as any kind of a PR stunt. It was designed as me joking with the people who follow me on Twitter. And it got swept up, and I woke up in the morning with Mark Pincus calling me at 6 a.m. saying, I'm not on stage with Steve Jobs. What is this about? And I said,
because you said it had Farmville built in.
I said it had Farmville built in, and you could play against, put like 4 pads together and play. And he says, I'm not on stage with Steve Jobs. And I said, I know, it was a joke. He goes, it's in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. I said, no, it's not. And he's like, no, it is, dude. And I pull it up, and I'm like, oh, my God. People have lost their minds over this device. And it was on CNBC. And I think, looking back on it, it's hysterical. But I did not intend that.
Fair enough.
And it does have something to say about that moment in time when people wanted to believe so much in a device. Moving on. Long-lasting content. This is something that's critical. If you type how to bake salmon or how to speak French into Google or Bing or Yahoo, a Mahalo page will come up in the top 10. This is because we have spent 3 years improving that page. People a lot of times want to do buzzy pages, things that are in the news. Michael Jackson is dead. Michael Jackson, Perflol, whatever the drug he was taking. That stuff may get you a quick pop, but you want to go, I think sometimes when you're doing SEO, try to own a couple of pages and make the page better than everyone else's page out there. And this is where the SEO, this is where white hat SEO beats black hat SEO. If you take a long approach and you say, I am going to build the best page on the internet, and I'm going to look at the top 10 pages and study them and say, I'm going to make my page better, you actually have a good chance of winning if you do the SEO things properly and market it. What people expect is, I'm going to make a page about how to speak French, but it's not going to have anything unique on it. And it's not going to be improved every month for 20 months. Take a very long view of traffic building and build a portfolio of pages when you do SEO and constantly improve them. And when you see one is working, Don't say, oh, it's working, I'm going to go work on something else. Take the one that's working and double down, make it better. So we did pages in the early days of Mahalo that were like, here's like a topic page on Grand Theft Auto walkthroughs. And we didn't have a walkthrough on the page. We just had like lists of other walkthroughs and what we liked about them, sort of like human curation of the walkthroughs that were out there. And then we realized, well, we ranked #1. And there's walkthroughs that are half complete that are ranked on the second page, but that's still better content than ours. Why don't we write the whole walkthrough? And they said, people said, oh my God, that's going to take 2 weeks. I said, great, that's defensible. That means if we spend the 2 weeks doing it and spend the $500 paying somebody to do it, some kid to play the whole game, we beat them. And we did. And then we started creating Mahalo video games on, you can look up Mahalo video games on YouTube. This channel makes $7,000 or $8,000 a month for us. It's video game walkthroughs. So we have, on the GTA 4 walkthroughs, our videos. We actually recorded playing the game and solving the problems. And so that iteration of constantly improving your content and making it better is what long-term content creation is about. Yes, you want to create a large number of pages. I talked about that previously. Yes, you want to name them properly. Yes, you want to create a little controversy. Yes, something incongruous, something controversial, link baiting, whatever. But make it better than any other page on the topic. Do that. If I can impart anything to you, it's the quality of the content over the long term that defines a brand and defines winning, or the quality of the service. If it's a service, it could mean faster, better, stronger, cheaper, higher quality, less misspellings, any of those things. Quality. Quality, quality.
Someone wants to call you out in the chat room. They say, Jason, what happened to SEO are terrorists?
That was a joke. That I said, if we want the honest answer, I said at some point SEO is bullshit. And that was at a conference, maybe in 2006, when somebody said, oh my God, Engadget has better SEO than Palm, because you have your Trio page, Trio 650, comes up ahead of the Palm Trio 650 page. How is that possible? And I didn't know. So I said, SEO, that's kind of bullshit, isn't it? Like, doesn't like the guys in the bad suits who try to get you to sign those 3-year contracts for $5,000 a month and promise you that they're going to get your pages above everybody else's? We don't do that. And the whole audience booed.
1 second. If you let the...
Still there? Whoop. See, the SEOs got right in the middle of that. I guess I didn't need to have you guys here. Sorry about that. I thought you were going to talk more about it. You have anything to add?
No, not really. It's actually kind of fun to listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that was weird.
Okay, we're back.
For some reason, Skype just cut us off.
The SEOs did it.
Right.
We were talking about SEO. Essentially, I made a throw-off comment. SEO is nonsense. The whole crowd went crazy. The truth was, in the early days of Engadget, Autoblog, Joystick, we didn't do any SEO. We just made a lot of content. And the reason we ranked above Palm and other places for product names, their own product names, was because we would write about their product name before they released it. So of course we were above them, because Google or Yahoo or Bing or MSN Live, whatever it's called, would say, oh, Trio 650, this page has been around for 3 months. This page is 3 days old. That page is better. I mean, since then, Google's kind of fixed that problem. But so anyway, I made this off-the-cuff remark, and the SEOs have never forgiven me, and now they just torture me constantly. You know, oh my God, you're spamming, you're doing this. And I'm like, well, look at these pages. And they're like, oh, look at these 3 pages on Mahalo. And I'm like, well, people can create any page they want on Mahalo, and you guys are going in there and creating pages like Jason sucks donkey blank. And it has no content on it. But I have a feeling you actually created that page and we just deleted it. We delete those pages, and people aren't actually searching for that so much. Anyway.
Well, listen, so we've actually blazed through our time. We've probably got time for one thing more.
Yep. Just another thing here, an opportunity. I'm showing a Google search result for how to speak French. And you see we have a page here. We're number 2. We were ranked number 1 for a while on this for how to speak French. And then you also see the first video result, how to speak French. It turns out that how to speak French video, which I'm pulling up here, we did on Mahalo Daily. It's got 110,000 views. We've made a lot of money from this one video. And it links to, in the show notes here, how to speak French. And we had one of our staffers make it like the Criterion Collection. And that's Veronica Belmont, who worked with us for a while. and she did this cute video on how to speak French. And this one video took a week to do or whatever, and probably cost us $1,000. It's easily made that back. And our How to Speak French page, with tons of advertising on it, should have this video on it. And these two things then reinforce each other.
Okay. Wow.
And so we actually own in that Google search result, How to Speak French, two of the top things. And Enrique, now that you know that we do, you know that we should build off of that.
Absolutely.
And so Enrique is pretty new at the company, but what I've been showing him is, hey, here are places where we've spent a lot of time and effort to make this page great, and we should make the How to Speak French page even better. Maybe we should do a series of videos on, 10 different things about speaking French and include them in the page and get people to spend even more time on that page. We'll move up to #1, and the revenue on that page will go from $2,000 a year to $20,000. And that's the kind of thinking that I have, which is we spent $2,000 on How to Speak French at Mahalo. Let's spend another $2,000 and get from #2 or 3 on Google to #1. That's 10x difference. Is it 10x difference or 5x difference in?
Average is 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay, so right there, 7. That's what I said. 5 to 10, so the average is 7. That's what I said. Okay, anyway, I'm joking. So 7. And so double down, invest in content. If you can steal an illegal stolen iPhone, do that. That's a joke. Galleries. I hate galleries, when they're like, oh, here, look at these 10 photos, and they just try to jump page views. Some people are doing galleries that are actually worthwhile and done in a clever fashion. Business Insider, one of my top 3 or 4 favorite blogs by Henry Blodgett. I'm not super involved with it, but he does these incredible galleries where when you read about something like this house that's going for $13 million, it says, click here to see a tour of the full loft. And this is a standard one, but he'll do ones like, these are the top 10 reasons why the economy's not coming back. And they'll show, it sort of tells a story going through the thing. So anyway, something I like the way they do some of them. Galleries do drive page views, although you have to be careful with those things because you could make your site spammy-ish.
So on that note, besides him, who is somebody that we should all be watching that's really good at creating content right now? A blogger or a site that you think we should be watching because they're doing stuff?
The Huffington Post is, for me, a very frustrating site. They do a lot of, I would say, gray hat SEO stuff, like reblogging people's stories and ranking above them. So they'll write 2 sentences and then cut 7 sentences from somebody else and get people to Facebook and tweet it, and they outrank the original source. But they do things like use striking photos and write really compelling headlines. And their format, I had heard somebody call this like a content throw-up.
Yes.
It turns out content throw-up with a lot of photos and a lot of really interesting things to click, people like. People don't care that it's messy. So I think sometimes people, design snobs in the Web 2.0 space, forget that if the image and the headline are done really well, people will click. And they also have fascinating social features that I have never seen integration of Facebook and some of these other features the way they're doing it, where as you look at stories, you earn badges, and then your friends see what stories you're writing on, and it knows your friendship. So it knows I know Craig Newmark from Craigslist. And so it's been emailing me that Craig is a blogger on Huffington Post, but I actually didn't know he was. And wow. So they're really thinking about the social issues and really taking Drudge to the next level. Well worth keeping an eye on them. They have become a juggernaut in terms of traffic. I think Quantcast has them in the top 50 now. And I used to sort of joke with Ariana that when she tripled her traffic, she'd have half of Mahalo's. And now she's got triple. So I'm an idiot. But she does a really good job of short, bite-sized, entertaining things. And watching YouTube, you'll see a lot of short videos are very powerful for people. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, sir. I think we actually have to call it a day there. I wish we could keep chatting. There's so much more to talk about.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure.